Trauma Program Manager, UH Portage Medical Center, Level 3.
Claire Hardman, Trauma Program Manager, Atrium Medical Center in Middletown, and we're Level 3.
Leanne Worcester, Nationwide Children's Hospital, Trauma Program Manager, he's Level 1.
Jeff Myers from Farmington, Ohio. We are Level 3 trauma center.
Deanna Pace, University Hospital Geauga Medical Center, or Level 3 Trauma Center.
Anna Spader, UH System Trauma Operations Manager, overseeing the Level 3 Trauma Center.
Lynn Morton, I'm the Trauma Program Manager for Rainbow Babies and Children's Hospital, Level 1 Pediatric Trauma Center in Cleveland.
All right. Welcome, everyone. All right, so we'll go ahead and get started. If everyone should have gotten the minutes in the email that was sent out yesterday afternoon. If we want to do a quick review of those, and I'll take a motion to approve the minutes.
Alex, this is Ann Monig. I make the motion to approve the minutes.
All right, thanks, Ann. A second? I heard someone, but it was pretty low.
Oh, Danielle, I second.
Oh, thanks, Danielle. All right, so we'll go on to the Treasury report. Kristen, I believe she's going to be in and out because she is in a class, so we'll go ahead and run through the monthly statements really quickly. So here's the breakdown of where we're at from a financial perspective. You can see what's been paid out over the last several months since the beginning of 2020. For the month of May, we received $300 in dues. We did a payout for the website, which was $453.72. The other is the purchase of the devices that we have talked about in the beginning of the meeting that are here in the room with us. The OWL Pros, there was 2 devices purchased to accommodate for these meetings, and hopefully they seem to be working out very well so far. So I definitely would like feedback after this meeting to see kind of where we're at with these devices and if they are working well for us. And then there is a monthly recurring purchase to support our Microsoft Teams platform, which is $42.70, which gives us a balance of $35,570.34 remaining in our account. And also, I did send out the dues from Kristen. That spreadsheet went out yesterday afternoon as well. So if you want to make sure you review that, I wasn't able to put up a list here on the PowerPoint of all the centers because there were some updates that Kristen did. I'll resend that spreadsheet because I don't think she sent it to everyone. There were a couple people that had fallen off of the initial spreadsheet that she sent out that did actually pay dues. So I'm going to update my list and then I'll send out her new spreadsheet as well. So if you check that list and you notice that you did send in your dues and you're not marked off, definitely let myself and or Kristen know. Okay, any questions on the Treasury report? All right, so we'll move on to the Ohio TQIP Collaborative, and I'll hand that over to Leanne for updates.
Here, I'm trying to find my minutes. So we met at the end of April and then, or maybe May. We met twice between April and May. We had great attendance. Many of you, I think, were on that meeting. We were able to go over the spring collaborative report and met again to get through it all. We had several ideas that came out of that group, some of which I think are going to be presented later on in this agenda. I think we're going to be talking about delirium. I'm trying to go to my minutes. There's the work groups that were previously part of the Ohio TQIP Collaborative have kind of switched up now that we have our new report. Julie, remind me, who did the AKI? Do you remember?
Andy was kind of leading that, I thought.
And then, I don't think you reported out at the meeting, but the isolated hip fracture. That was a great report out of the hip fracture.
That's us.
Jenny.
That's you guys. Okay.
Yeah, that's us.
Do you want to give your summary of the isolated hip work?
Really, I'm gonna try to do a TQIP poster as
from our center. I don't know, we'll see what happens. I'm gonna try to write an abstract. I wasn't really prepared, my computer died. I mean, what do you want me to, sorry.
I didn't
I mean, I
realize
think
far
that
up the
I
agenda.
shared some good work that our center has been doing, and we gonna share them.
You just unmuted it. On the I just wanted to open up the chat.
I think where we left it is,
So I was gonna share some of my stuff, and then we're gonna get, our group is not done working. We felt there's some other gaps we wanna look at together, and then we're gonna make some recommendations to the whole group when we finish with our other few gaps that we wanted to work on. That's how I remember it ended. Is that you agree with
yeah,
that?
because I think we wanted to take your,
Right,
what we had tried to do was go through all the best practices for the ACS, and it just became this big monstrous thing. So Jenny had something that she put into action that was showing good results. So we're gonna take that and compare it to the gap analysis that we did for the ACS and see if there's other things we can insert in there, so.
Okay, sorry, I have my minutes up now, and forgive me if you have this on the agenda for later, Alex. I was kind of trying to scan. I know Gordy's talking about delirium, but, so there were a couple other things that I see OST, we're supposed to come here. So the processes of care, we looked at the orthopedic trauma data, and there was some discussion about the amount of unknown or missing data in those fields. So we wanted to ask at this meeting if each individual center could go back and validate those fields. So specifically in the processes of care, the orthopedic trauma sections, it's the open fractures, the femur, and those types of fields. There was several areas where we could not explain, where there was unknown data, particularly missing OR times. So if we get individual centers to go back and validate that data, we were hoping that that would cross over to the collaborative report. And then the same kind of discussion was in the processes of care, VTE prophylaxis. There was some discussion, and I don't know if anyone on this call knows the answer. We did not know. There was discussion about how the ACS is pulling the data for the no prophylaxis field. So if anyone has gone back behind their report and had their data coordinators look and see how that is being populated. It's unknown if patients who were not clinically appropriate for clinical prophylaxis are excluded from that data. If I haven't already, I think I've already reached out to the ACS, I'll come back to the emails, but I'm going to request this information from the ACS, but if someone's already done that work, that was a point of discussion. Then the last thing was the processes of care, neurotrauma care, the intraparenchymal oxygen monitoring. The intraparenchymal oxygen monitoring was still very high compared to the overall cohort. So I know we've talked about looking at how our data coordinators are applying the different monitors, how they're coding those. And so that's an opportunity there. And Alex, you clarified that in the hemorrhagic shock data review that we were talking about the angiography. And you clarified that it should be all collected, not just the initial.
yes, that on the, in the dictionary, that it's all episodes of angiography need to be collected.
Unlike
There was
our
some
CTs
confusion.
where you just collect the
The
initial,
initial.
for angiography, it should be all of them. So we did have a discussion about that as well.
Yeah, that was a question that had came up in our group, as far as CTs versus angiography, and angiography is collected every time. And I'm pretty sure the reason for that is because it's something that they're pulling into the TQIP report for hemorrhagic shock versus where your regular CAT scans is just the initial that are in the ED.
I think so. Those were the points to bring back to this group. The last part is the delirium. We had a very good discussion about that, but I think Bernie's going to present that later. So I think we're going to hopefully form a work group on that, but I'll let Bernie address that. I think that's all I have unless someone remembers other discussion.
And the only thing I would just add, as I don't know how much was discussed at the last meeting since I was absent, but with the pediatric Ohio TQIP collaborative, it's brand new. It's only the second pediatric TQIP collaborative in the country. So we're really excited about that. Just at the beginning stages of pulling that together, all of our pediatric centers are currently getting their agreement signed, and we're getting all of that transferred over to TQIP. So we'll have a lot more exciting things to share here in the future with that.
Just real quick on that, Alex, I just caught in the last month's or the last OSTNL meeting minutes. There's actually, I believe there's 8 pediatric trauma centers in the state. 7 out of 8 are participating. The minutes say we'd like to get all 7 pediatric centers in the state to join. I think there's 8 in the state. 1 can't join right now because they're having a transition of leadership, but we are 100% keeping them on board.
Okay, so then hopefully we'll be everyone on board. That'll be great. Thank you. All right, so ODPS report, I don't believe Eric is on, but he did send, Eric, if you are on, go ahead and say anything because I can't see the participant list currently. But this is the update from Eric. So the deadline for submitting the 2021 data was April 30th of 22. Until the 2021 submissions are current, you will be considered out of compliance. There has been a big push from the state to try and pull the data in. I know there's been a lot of challenges with everyone, with staffing and registry, and the state has seen a lot of backlog and data being submitted. So they're going to be a little bit more aggressive now with wanting to push for these deadlines and getting that information submitted. And we talked about in the level 3 group earlier about that, of course, there are still concessions being made for those that are behind, and that information is submitted to the state. So if you are behind in your data, you do have to report that to the state. So Eric's contact is here in case you need that, but reach out to him and make sure that he knows that you will not make that deadline, because even if you do reach out, but you still remain compliant, eventually they will send a formal letter out to the CEO of your hospital to let them know. And it's informational. There's really nothing honestly punitive, at least from the state side, that they can't punish us necessarily for not submitting. However, they will let your hospital CEO know that you're behind in your data. And of course, no one wants that to happen. So just so everyone's aware that that is something that the state will do if you are not compliant with submitting the trauma data. And so just make sure you reach out to Eric in case you have any issues or have any questions on that. And then submitting first quarter for 2020 is June 30th for the state. But keep in mind, if you weren't already aware, that the deadline for reporting for your TQIP report was actually yesterday. So June 2nd was the deadline for first quarter submission for your TQIP report, for your fall TQIP report. So if you didn't make that deadline, then you'll have some missing information in your TQIP report, but the state deadline is June 30th. One other quick thing is if you want to receive updates and notifications from the state about the registry, there is a delivery list that you can go to. The website is here, and it's also, if you look in your attachments on the email I sent out yesterday, the liaison report, all of this information is listed in the liaison report, so you can copy and paste that link if you need it. But go ahead and subscribe to the trauma groups and the registry list, so then you'll be on notification when new trauma centers come out, when they send any updates about the registry from the state, so you can be in the know on that. Any questions or comments from the state ODPS report?
Alex, I think we've asked, hey Sherry, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm looking at Roxana's email. We've asked for an extension past the June 30th 2022.
Yeah, because DSO forgot to fix the DI platform.
Yeah. So I think
So
we
was that
requested
approved?
September 30th, but I don't think that's been approved yet, but I don't know
Maybe,
if
was it after the last trauma committee meeting, I wonder?
I don't know, I just got this email yesterday.
Okay. Probably, yeah, they haven't had trauma committee since then, so then, if there was a request for that, that probably, I would have said, it's been accepted.
Okay.
Because we have CDM hospitals and we're DI and state's DI, they fixed your stuff, but they sold it.
So September 30th for those of us.
So it sounds like there may be an extension.
Knox has an issue as well, but they don't submit for their state, so,
Oh, so then, okay.
so it doesn't matter for their hospitals. I mean, they're fine, it's just kind of a population now.
Okay.
So if that's a recent development, it might have been after Eric sent this in. So there may
She just
be,
sent it all yesterday.
all yesterday, okay. So there might be a deadline. You said September 30th?
Yeah, that's what, yeah, I've seen that.
Anyone else have any feedback on that or extra information to add? Okay, so we'll go ahead and start off with our other liaison reports. We'll start off with Julie.
We met, the trauma committee met on May 11th. It was, we had gotten approval to meet virtually again. That ends June 30th. So our next, pending any other legislation, our next meeting will be July 13th, and that's in person. We were unable to meet quorum for our meeting. There are still multiple spots on the committee open. And I know there was talk at our last meeting about taking a request and having it attached to legislation to have that ruling changed, that we can have more than one representative from a health system. And there were also still some outstanding spots on the MFATS board. So we're kind of hamstrung right now that if we don't get good attendance, it's very hard to move stuff forward. And a lot of the stuff that we've already discussed was at the meeting, but a lot of pending legislation out there that impacts trauma.
Can you give us a couple examples of that? Or no?
Well, some of these may have been passed by now, but
Okay.
House Bill 21 about stroke protocols.
Okay,
House Bill 509, it changed the number of CE for firefighters, it capped it at 36.
I think I did see that.
There, and a lot of little.
Okay.
But the big one will be to be able to get this changed
Sure.
in law so that we can get the committee filled and start being more productive.
MFATS board, I don't know if Stacy is on.
She's
Oh.
It's been a while. So yeah, just to dovetail on what you just said, they are discussing changing the rule to have people that represent one health system have more than one person able to be on the trauma committee because of the quorum issues, and it's just been kind of just slowing things
Frustrating.
up for months. And so, yeah, I ran into that problem because I tried to get on that committee and they're like, nope, you already have somebody on profile health on the committee. And I was like, okay. So yeah, they are working on that. Some of the other things that we discussed at the last meeting included trauma triage rules. And this was just really for EMS personnel, and it just added and amended a couple of things for the EMS providers to just evaluate patients for additional symptoms, including respiratory distress, respiratory failure, and the use of anticoagulants or antiplatelet therapy. So that motion had passed. Looks like there was a trauma annual report that came out of the trauma committee for 2020 that was approved to distribute to stakeholders. So I imagine Diane, she was at that meeting, so I imagine that will come forward. You guys talked about the data deadline already. They were holding firm on the data deadline at the end of April. And the only teeth in that, that I could see on the website in the Ohio Revised Code is that if your agency or your institution is out of compliance with that, you'll not be eligible to participate in the EMS grant funding. So until you're back in compliance. So if you're going for an EMS grant or somebody in your agency is going for one of those grants, just would be careful of that. Let me see, and then I will talk about some of the subcommittee work that they're also experiencing attendance challenges now that we've moved back to in-person meetings. So the Education Committee did not meet. EMS for Children Committee did not meet. EMS System Development Committee had no report. They're adding an ad hoc funding committee for the EMS board to talk about how they're going to provide continuous funding for EMS. The EMS committee, there's a lot of work, I guess, that goes on behind the scenes and requires some dedication from the ODPS staff. The Medical Oversight Committee also did not meet. Neither did the Medical Transportation Committee. The Critical Care Subcommittee, it sounds like they did meet, and they're having a change in leadership. So Mr. Appelhans is stepping down as vice chair, but will stay on the committee. And then Ruta Jenkins was appointed as vice chair. The Scope of Practice Ad Hoc Committee did meet. They are looking at EMS scope of practice. There's a change in the national model that they want to bring the state of Ohio in line with. And I think that relates back to some of the CE requirements and the different modalities and ways that the EMS providers can achieve their CE. And then House Bill 138 was passed, which modifies the laws governing services provided by EMS personnel and qualifications for serving as medical director of an EMS organization. And really the crux of that was that you had to be an active practicing ED physician to apply as a medical director for an EMS agency. Apparently there's been some issues in the past where we have had maybe family practice, maybe someone who is not practicing at all anymore, just kind of staying in those positions unchecked.
Didn't that one include like advanced practitioners as well? I thought that was what was proposed, that it could be.
Not sure. Yeah, I'll have to follow up on that.
Did that committee get a trauma surgeon representative on that committee?
Which one?
On your MPATS board, I thought that was open, but I was just wondering if anybody.
There were 7 open spots.
Yeah,
I think one of them expired, but.
Yeah, I don't think we have, I'm thinking of the roster, we've got a physician from Children's, we've got a physician from Emergency Department, but I don't think we have a trauma surgeon. I know Dr. George was on for a long time, and then he stepped back.
Yeah, I think I believe he was the one that expired. But I believe the issue currently, last I heard at least, was that there has to be multiple nominations.
Correct.
from the I can't think of the group. Yeah, the 2 sponsoring groups.
Yes.
I think it's one's an orthopedic group and one is, I can't think of.
Surgical.
It's another surgical, Ohio surgical group. And you have to have all nominations full before they even accept it.
That's right.
So that would be, I think, 6 nominations between the 2 groups, that they have to have all 6 nominations before they even look at the seat. And I think that's the problem currently, is getting all of that. Getting all those people in.
The board meets next on June 16th, and so I don't know, maybe I can provide you guys an update after that.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. OIPP, Barb, I know they meet today, so I don't know if there's anything pertinent that you want to throw out.
No, I don't have anything new. I mean, it's been 3 months since they've met, so.
Okay. Are they meeting in person at all? Is there any plan to do that again?
No, as of right now, they're still virtual. I don't know if they'll discuss that today or not.
STN, Shannon?
Yes, so they did announce the TraumaCon 2023 will be in person March 29th through the 31st in Denver. And then they did release the 2022 STN modules, that the library of those modules. So now available for ordering. And then there is that addendum to the bottom where it says if you want to purchase it for your system, please contact so that we can share it across, the hospital system.
Oh, nice. Did they give a price range on that?
There is no price. I can check it. Last night, I did not see a price.
I know I purchased the modules quite some time ago, and it was really helpful, especially if you're looking at trying to find some packaged education to get out to your critical care areas or even the emergency department, to purchase those as a system so that you can, I believe once you purchase them, you can make some edits, or is it, you can edit?
It doesn't come with the CE tariff, but you can take it and edit it and get it approved for your own CE that your facility too.
So it's something to consider looking into if you don't have time to create education from scratch, but you want to buy some for your hospital or for your system that you can repackage and get out to your teams. It is something that's helpful.
Oh, look, I think I have to dig into it more, like go to order and see if it takes me through enough to see the prices.
Yeah, it was around $400 some when I purchased it. That was like 6 years ago, so I'm sure it's more now. Yeah, I'm sure it's more now, but still, when you look at the grand scheme of how much one TNCC class costs I mean, you still have to get TNCC, of course, but even if it's $1,500 or something like that, it may be worth it depending on your hospital situation.
Hey, Alex and Shannon, this is Ann. What was the name of those modules again?
So on the STN website, they call it the Electronic Library of Trauma Lectures. But there's 18 modules that comes with it, and we've always just referred to them as the STN modules here.
Hey,
Okay,
Alex,
thanks.
this is Margaret. For STN, the other thing that I also wanted to plug, because it's relatively new, is PTAC. It's for all the pediatric facilities. It's going to be pediatric trauma care after, like once the patient's out on the floor. We had the inaugural course at the STN conference a couple of months ago, and we're just formalizing and finishing a couple of things, but that's also going to be ready to move out. Probably more pertinent for the pediatric facilities, for their PICU, OR, and floor nurses. More to come.
Awesome.
Also, I dug a little deeper, it's $525.
Okay.
Not too bad.
Yeah. And that's, you get, once you purchase them, they're yours. So it's, until they do an update, so you can kind of do what you want to do with the content. All right.
7474.
If anyone is not muted, if you want to go ahead and mute your phones if you're not actively speaking, just because I can't mute you right now. So OCOT updates, I actually have an update because Dr. George can't run away from me. So we haven't had a lot of OCOT updates in the past, but now Dr. George from SUMA has taken over as chair of OCOT. He took over at the beginning of this year, and they're kind of in a transitional period. They're one of the coordinators that they utilize with OCOT has been kind of on leave and is coming back now. So they're really in a transitional period of rebuilding, getting the group together, kind of pulling things into alignment. So hopefully here soon, they'll be able to get things back up and running and having regular meetings and getting kind of all of the things that have been missing for a while back together. I know one of his initiatives and what OCOT would like to do is to kind of pull everyone out of our silos a little bit and work more collaboratively with all of the different trauma groups that we have across the state. Of course, OSTNL and AOTR, we've been meeting regularly, but there's a lot of other pockets of different trauma groups across the state. And I think that's really our initiative as well. So we'll be working with them to try and kind of get the pulse of all the different trauma organizations or groups or anything that has to deal with trauma across our state, at least kind of together under some type of umbrella to where we at least know about each other. We know the goals and initiatives for each group, and we can collaborate if needed on different projects. So I know that's one of his big visions for OCOT for the future.
Is he going to try to get medical directors more engaged and
I
collaborating?
believe so. That's also where, when I've been sending out the rosters and asking for medical director emails, that's also some of for him as well, because that's some of the problem is they don't have a lot of contacts for the medical directors across the state. So that is one of his big goals too. So if you haven't sent your medical director email, that's the main reason. I won't be using it for OSTNL purposes. It'll be on the roster, so everyone that's in OSTNL can see it, but it'll also be kind of a list for him as well to be able to send out OCOT information for those that are interested. So if you haven't sent that, go ahead and send me that too.
Are you the new coordinator?
Am I?
I just wondering.
No.
I just wondering if you know.
I've not been volunteered for that yet.
Okay, just checking.
Pediatric Trauma Society, Lynn.
Hi, everybody. Just a couple updates on Peace Trauma Society. Reconvening what is originally started a couple of years ago before COVID is the guidelines committee. Peace Trauma Society are trying to put together, or are right now successfully putting together hubs for pediatric trauma. And the efforts are to specifically put out best practice guidelines for everybody, focus for everybody, and they're focusing on regions. So there's injury prevention, there's mental health, there's things on cardiovascular injuries and such as that. So more to come on that. It's again, just pushed out in the last couple of months. Starting to do a lot of work on that, and you'll see more to come on those hubs where you can access some of those resources that are, from that society. Secondly, there is a interesting education opportunity coming up. Alex sent that out for me, and it's called Pediatric Abdominal Trauma from Farm to Table. That is happening on June 9th from noon to 1 Eastern Standard Time, and that's going to be a look at a patient, a complex trauma patient, each trauma patient, from teens through rehab. So that's going to be awesome. Next, last update is the annual meeting was announced, and it will be November 2nd through 5th in Portland, Oregon. And the registration is open for that.
Thanks. And ORTOC, Danielle.
Hi guys, not too much really going on with ORTOC right now. Olivia is reviewing all the data for the NIFTY project. So once we have some final numbers on that, I'll have that to report out. We did just meet last week, however, and we're going to make the NIFTY project kind of a subcommittee of those who want to help with the manuscript, and we'll continue moving forward with that. And there'll be a doodle call out probably next week now. And we're going to go back to the ORTOC meeting.
I think you cut out right at the end, Danielle.
What did you miss? Or what was the last thing you heard?
Manuscript. The manuscript.
Oh, okay, you missed a lot. So we're gonna have a sidebar group with the manuscript about the NIFTY project, and our group as a whole, the ORTOC group, which anybody can come to. We're gonna kind of revamp it and go back to looking at the regions, what the regions are working on, issues within the regions, things that are going well within the region so people can learn from each other, and then see if there's any projects that we want to start working on besides the NIFTY one.
Okay, perfect, thank you. And lastly, is ALTR. So the Education Committee with ALTR is working on putting together study groups for the registrars that want to take this CAISS exam to meet the new standards. So if you haven't looked at the grade book or have been on TQuip from last year, one of the new standards in the grade book is that you have to have at least one registrar, person that does registry has to have the CAISS certification. So that'll be a big change. Seeing as how a good portion of the registry team mainly go for the CSTR exam. They're putting ACS putting their support on the CAISS. So there's going to be a big push for that certification to be done. So ALTR is working on study groups. The CAISS certification is owned by AAAM. So there's a lot of restrictions around like study guides and like how, other certifications, everyone's putting out their own thing. There's a lot of regulation around it through CAIS because it's owned by AAAM. So I don't know if there's going to be review classes coming. I don't know if AAAM is maybe putting things together just because I'm sure they know that there's going to be a big jump in their certification coming soon. But AOTR is working on study groups to help the registrars that are interested in getting the exam now. Their first in-person meeting, they're meeting once this year. Their in-person meeting will be October, as well as our October meeting. So we did just confirm room. We did secure a room here at Nationwide for AOTR as well. So for the October meeting, we will have OSTNL and AOTR in the same facility. Which has been a challenge for several years, even pre-COVID, because AOTR is a much bigger group than us. So there's always challenges for them in getting space, not only for them, but also for OSTNL, because a lot of people carpool. So I think the October meeting will be a really good meeting to have everyone participate and come in person. If you can plan for that early to be in person for that October meeting. And we won't have the meetings together. They'll be in separate conference rooms, but we'll be in the same place. ALTR also has a mentoring program that they're trying to push out more than they have in the past. It's for senior trauma registrars that are affiliated with ALTR, work with newer registrars, which I know a lot of people are getting new registrars, so it may be something you want to contact AOTR to tap into. I know Kelly Harrison is one of the people that is working really closely, and she'll actually be on the call here soon to talk about their financial study, so you can ask her any questions. But they do have a mentorship program for new trauma registrars, so it's a good thing to tap into. And then lastly, their education committee will be discussing the new registry rules from the college in June. All right. Any questions?
Hey, Alex, it's Andrea.
Yeah.
Hey, I just wanted to give people a heads up on the CAISS exam in case you guys aren't familiar with it or not aware. That exam is only offered twice a year, so spring and fall. And I think it takes a few weeks to get your results back from it too. So just knowing this is a new standard, I know anybody who's being reviewed in the next, what is it, up until next September or something like that. We're still on the Orange Book, but if anybody's going to be reviewed on the new standard, just keep that in mind that it's only twice a year, and it is a process that takes a little while.
Yeah, that's definitely good to know. Mm-hmm. And I was told as well, and I don't know if there's going to be an update and if anyone else has more information, that it's largely based off of AIS 808. It's not pulling in the AIS 15. So if you have registrars that have only taken AIS 15, it may be worth sending them to AIS 08. Or, if they haven't had AIS 08 in a while, that may be an option of financially, if you can send them to the AIS 8 course.
Is that still offered?
It is, yeah. There's not as many, but they still have it offered. So, and that's an interesting thing too. I don't know when that's going to change or shift, but there's kind of a lot of.
That goes with your question originally then.
Like,
her,
That really puts us in a bad
yeah,
position.
Yeah,
yeah,
I mean, because then we gotta pay that course twice.
yeah.
right.
And
It
the
does.
CAS.
Mhm, yeah, that's
done and unnecessary.
Why we,
And I
who
don't
made that
know
rule?
if anyone has any contacts with AAAM or, I know, Vic used to teach for them, and I don't know if she has any information, if she has any still contacts with them at all, if they're gonna change that soon, because that is going to be a challenge if they're gonna have to go back through those courses.
Is the ACS even aware of what a
Yeah.
conundrum?
I don't know.
Is that like a business thing or, I mean, I don't know, is that like people
For
teach
them
those
to-
classes, then they get 2 times versus 1? I mean, I don't know, I'm just asking, I mean,
I think it's probably just too siloed and they're not.
Yeah, and I don't know if they all, and typically I know just, there's the CSTR, for those that are newer, to kind of knowing all these acronyms we're throwing around. So the CSTR exam is a certified trauma registry exam, and that's more comprehensive about just kind of global registry topics. The CAISS exam is really focused on AIS scoring and ISS scoring. I'm assuming that they went with the CAISS exam certification because it is more structured as far as AIS scoring. And of course, since they're pushing data and TQIP and all that, that would be the more ideal certification that they would want a registrar to have. But it's all owned by AAAM, their AIS course, it's all tied together. So I think there is just some things to think about tied to that and how that impacts our trauma programs. And maybe that's something, I don't know if we need to formally reach out.
I was gonna say, we can look into who we need to contact, that might need to come on board.
Yeah. So I don't know if that's something that we maybe look at on OSTNL's behalf and even take that to trauma committee.
Clarify some of our questions first and then adjust them.
And reach out. Yeah. And really breaking that down. Yeah.
This is Ann. I know you probably can't see it, but in the chat, there's some good information from Margot and Melody about Kelly Harrison still being on the board. And maybe she'd be able to have some insights, as well as Melody thought that Vic was still teaching AIS.
Okay, so maybe we can reach out. But Kelly is actually, she probably will be signing on here soon. So maybe we can bombard her with.
And through our education committee, Shannon had some great ideas about, because Shannon Swader is one of the ones that are going to have to be verified next year on the new grade book. And so she had an idea about collectively as OSTNL reaching out to the ACS for clarification on some different standards. And this could definitely be one that we could include in that. Because I think as a collective body, maybe they'd be a little bit more responsive.
Yeah, that would be perfect. Yeah, that is, we're going with the education piece as well. So we'll see if, oh, she's in the lobby. I guess we should let her in. Her in the lobby. Let's see here. And if you want to go ahead and start your application while I'm trying to get Kelly in, that would be great.
Yeah, sure. Can I share my screen? Is that okay?
Please do.
Okay, no problem. First off, I just want to thank my team of folks that are on the education committee with me, which would include Danelle Boomer, Melody Campbell, Marian Landfried, Beth Larson, and Shannon Swader. So these guys are doing all the hard work. So I greatly appreciate all of their input and ideas because that's where all the great ideas are coming from. So if you guys remember, we want to continue our OSTNL and AOTR education series because it's been successful in the past. And so we want to keep that going and get it restarted this year. And so we are planning to do them bi-monthly as long as we've got a lot of great topics. And do those on the off months of OSTNL AOTR meetings as we have in the past. So I'll be sending out some invites for those as we move forward. So if you remember, I sent out an OSTNL Education Committee survey, and so thank you. I had 30 responses to that, so I greatly appreciate that. And that is what I'm sharing right now. So hopefully you can see it all right. We first asked, what are people going to be verified on in the coming years? So, who's going to be verified on the gray book? Those of us that are still going to be verified next year in the orange book. And so actually a majority of people are going to be verified next fall with the gray book. That'll be their next verification. The one that has an other response that you can see there is that was a regional response. So in their region, they had centers that'll be verifying in both books. And then we just asked what level of trauma center it is, and you guys can kind of see the different responses. We had responses from all 3 levels of trauma center, which was great. And then next we asked, so what are you worried about with the gray book? What sections are you most concerned with? And so I know this is kind of jumbled here, but basically what it's stating is that the #1 first choice that folks had concerns with was the section on institutional administrative commitment. The second would be PI, not surprising at all. Personnel and services, I think we're all feeling that, whether it's registry, whether it's PI coordinators, or whatever it may be. And then a scattering kind of other things. The next thing we asked, and if you can kind of see the word salad here, is of those sections, what standards were you most concerned with? And so we had the biggest amount of responses about PI, data surveillance, a lot about registry requirement, and then kind of just a spattering of a lot of different things. And then here you see an example of multiple different sections that may need, or standards that may need some clarification. And so I think that's one of the things that, because like I said, Shannon had a great idea of getting a list of some of these standards that we just need a little bit more clarification from the ACS, just like we were talking about just a second ago. And then I could just ask for some help with gray book education. So whoever it was that stated yes, I greatly appreciate that. I'm going to put my contact information, my work email, plus my OSTNL email in the chat when I'm done talking, so that you can reach out and let me know if you're interested in helping us. And then lastly, we just talked about what future topics do we want to discuss? And so we see a lot of different things here about PI documentation, loop closure, verifications, feedback, audit filters, that sort of thing. So the group of us kind of started talking about, we already have a topic class that's out there and available. And so we kind of threw around some ideas about maybe OSTNL could support a topic class potentially, whether it's, I don't know if they're doing any of those in person right now. So it's something to kind of look into as a future thing, because that would really tie in all of the PI information that folks are kind of clamoring for. And then we also thought too, that as a group, if we could encourage or maybe even facilitate some good mentoring and just getting together of the PI coordinators that are all in this committee now, and sharing contact information and that sort of thing, and sharing of ideas, what's working at their centers, that type of thing. So those are going to be some future educational topics that we're going to look at. But first, we'd like to focus on the first question about the standards and then the sections that give everybody the most angst. So as I go back up here to this question about the sections from the book that you're most concerned about, we had a lot of people that stated the institutional and administrative commitment. I don't know if anyone is on that responded to this survey, but there's only about, I think, one or two standards in that. So can anyone tell me what was the biggest concern there from that?
I didn't put that as number one, but I'm wondering what concerned that administration will see all of the additional requirements, changes, personnel, financial implications, and will not support it in the future, maybe. Or there might be pushback in supporting it. I don't know if maybe that's for people.
When you look at.
Alex, can you repeat some of that? Sorry, I was getting a little bit of feedback.
Oh, okay. I think she was saying that she didn't fill out it as number one, but she's thinking just with all the other requirements that are being set forth, that it may be more so that having that administrative support for all of the other things that are in the book that they're wanting us to do and change and adjust and pivot to, is having that support.
When you look at the
and that's
that we're up against with the increased costs for TQIP, the increased costs for registry, and then you're adding positions, where's the breaking point?
The breaking point about how much money is your center making for the hospital? I'm gonna bet it.
Can you show that?
Yeah, I think that's one thing that we're really gonna I think we really need to figure out how to show that. I don't know if anybody's completely knows how to do that. I know there was a TCA webinar, I think this week about that, but I think like we're gonna have to, it just feels to me that we do bring money to the hospital. I could be completely wrong. Stacy's in much I am, but I just have to that trauma business drives EMS volume for other things. Like I think if you look when your trauma center was created and you look at your EMS volumes, you can see that all EMS volumes go up. I don't know what.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. The so-called halo effect of being a trauma center and all of the resources available to be a trauma center. And so some of the things that we do when we look at that is really to look at the downstream revenue from other types of services that you provide. Your orthopedic folks are bringing in, or your interventional radiology folks are doing, and all of those things and how they roll up to offset your overhead for your program.
Okay, that's kind of what we were thinking. We were thinking that, and and how to share that, because newer TPMs, all of us, need help with trying to write those SBARs, those decision documents, and all of that. So that's kind of what our group thought that maybe was the concern. So maybe that is something. I think you guys had some great ideas there, and so I think that's where we'll focus some of our education in July on is, hey, what all can you look at, and how do you do that? So that was very helpful. So our plan is really to kind of present something like that. The group's gonna throw something together, and also Shannon Schwader has done a gap analysis on the gray book, because I think one of her centers is one of the very first to be verified in September on it. So she's also going to do a quick share of that and just say, this is what they've done. This is how they did it. So we'll devote a majority of the first part of the hour to talking about these standards that were concerning to folks, and then she's going to share that as well. So that'll be the plan for our July education, and I will send out an invite for that. It will be virtual, and I will also put my contact information in the chat. So that's all I have. Unless anybody else from the education committee, did I miss anything else?
I think one other thing about finances, so for us, for our level threes that are like in systems, remember to think big because you're filtering, we're filtering our patients to our level one centers. So remember our impact, depending geographically kind of where you are. I believe there are patients, at least in my center, that you see would not have gotten some of the transfers. They might have gone to different places. So remember when you're thinking finance, think about the whole, even the transfer patients. Stacy, you agree? I think that's one of the reasons you see more level threes in certain areas. I mean, they have to be making some money or people wouldn't be doing them as much. I don't know.
That's a great point, Jenny. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Because I know, I know there's a chance that, I get so many patients from all of my level threes that are, I don't mean to say our level threes that are in our system. And, we have that great relationship. So it does make a difference. Yes.
And remember about the people that get discharged from the level ones. I'm thinking of like some face injuries and stuff that get fixed later. So sometimes then those will come back to my level 3 center, or my hospital. So that's also like all, more surgeries and.
But drawing all of that
You're
in, I think if we could maybe streamline a way of where to look, what to do, to be able to justify the cost.
But I think we need to be stewards of our program that way, and I think it's a new way of thinking for some of us vintage nurses also, who have always been about, good patient care, but we also have to figure out how to put some dollars to it, because that's what really matters. I mean, that's what people really listen to too.
Exactly. All right, great. Thanks all.
All right, so I'm gonna go and share my screen again. We'll run through the rest of liaison reports really quick. Kelly is on, and then we'll let her kind of give us maybe some quick info about the CAISS, as well as then go into her presentation. So the level 3 committee, Jenny, if you want to give a quick update.
So we, I sort of filled in for Diane, or I did fill in for Diane today. We just discussed some of our initiatives that we are going to keep on the agenda, which is the NIFTY in terms of the level 3 centers. So kind of looking at that. We still, as level 3 centers, kind of want to try to own the TNC education for other critical access hospitals. So we're trying to figure out like what that looks like. What could we do as a group? Maybe we could, how can we support other places? We talked about if we were going to help them with TNCC, could one day be virtual and then the second day be hands-on? Can we support people in any other kind of way? We know it's a big, lofty goal, and we all have very limited resources, but we still want to keep trying to do that. We talked about some of the other challenges, personnel challenges in our level 3 centers, and I'm sure even in our level 1, some newer challenges. For instance, I shared our center's having blood bank technician shortages, the IV contrast issue, which I think the whole world is having an issue with. Just some very, like the lab personnel, some where there's not as many people to draw from, and how people are being creative around some of those challenges. What else, you guys? Did we say anything else? That's kind of about it. Yeah, I think that's pretty much what we talked about today.
Great. PI committee, Leanne.
Just real quick, the 2020 trauma registry annual report is now live. It can be found, it's out there. It was approved and it's live. I just verified you can find it on the web. So of course now we start working on 2021. And then we were supposed to meet in person today. We are going back to in-person meetings with that committee. It was not canceled it was actually canceled because the person in the presentation had a conflict. So, but that meeting is going to go back to in person. That's the gist of it.
Thank you. And anything for the website, Andrea?
Hey guys, nothing really new regarding the website. Just send me, I know we're starting to have events and things again. If you guys have anything that you want us to put on the calendar, please send it my way and I can get that on there. And then also working on getting the schedule for the rest of the year on there too. So let me know if you guys have any suggestions.
Thank you. All right, so we're going to shift the agenda really quick. I have on the new business, Kelly Harrison is on, and she is going to give us discuss the results from the AOTR salary survey. But really quick, Kelly, we were just talking about the CAISS exam and the requirements surrounding that. And we were having some conversation about preparing for the exam and the content of the exam. And from my knowledge that I've been told is that it's largely, if not all, based on AISO 8. And so because of that, if there are registrars that have not gone through AISO 8 or it's been many years since they've gone through the actual course, that it may be beneficial to take that course. But then that kind of presents a conflict with AIS 15 now being out and potentially causing a duplicate charge for our programs to have to send people to these different classes. And so I didn't know if you had any insight on just the exam in general, and if you wanted to weigh in on any of that really quick before you started.
Sure, happy to help. The exam correct is based on 2008, the 2008 dictionary. So we will not incorporate questions from the 15 dictionary until after everybody is actively using that, which is probably going to be a few years down the line. I don't think it's necessary to take a course of 2008 to prepare for the class. A lot of it is basic general rules and coding guidelines that are going to be within your dictionary that you would have learned in whatever class that you took. Preparation for the exam is a lot of anatomy review, read your course book, read your dictionary, go through all of your rule books. The AOTR did announce today that they're going to, the education committee has created a study group. So that's going to be offered up for people to get together online once a week for, I think it's like an 8 or 10 week time period to study together to help prepare for that exam. So all of your registrars would have just received that information this morning. Does that cover it? Do you have other specific questions?
I think so. So if a registrar took the AIS 15 course, that should give them enough foundational knowledge to be able to prepare for the certification, in your opinion?
Yes. The big change from 08 to 15 include the spine chapter. So as long as you're utilizing your 08 dictionary and you read those rules within your dictionary from there, you should be fine preparing for that. There are no specific requirements before you take the class. It says a minimum of a high school diploma. You must have completed the online application and pay your fee. So there are no other requirements to sit for the exam.
We have a question for you.
Hi, Jen. So if someone takes the 2015 course, they get the 2015 book, and we're not able to obtain the 2008 book for them unless they took the 2008 course. So how would they get study material for the 08 version for the CAISS?
I don't know if you can purchase the book separately. I think you would have to reach out to AAAM and inquire about that. I would wonder if there's some in your department from people that have left. I know that if they're currently coding in the registry right now, they should be using 08.
Yes, so they're using 08, but they have the in trauma base, you can look the codes up for the 08 in there and whatnot. Yeah. But to get my understanding, and when I took the AS course, I could not get an 08 book. I could not purchase it separately. I could only get the book for the course I was took. And it's copyrighted. You can't duplicate it.
Kelly, do you think, that there's any, I guess, contacts and maybe that we can, just propose that some of those challenges, I don't know if AAAM would be willing to maybe make some adjustments for that purpose?
Cookman is the technical coordinator for AIS, so she would be who you would direct your questions to.
Who was the contact cut out?
Oh,
Kathy
sorry.
Cookman.
I am happy to take the questions back to the certification board, but we don't meet again for another couple of months. So, but I'm happy to send an email if you'd like.
Yeah, that would be great. And I guess if anyone has any specific questions that they want Kelly to send, if you want to send them to me, then I'll get them to Kelly, and then she can get that information for us, and then I'll send it out to the group on that. Okay. Any other questions for Kelly on the CAAS piece? Great. Thank you. So Kelly, I'll let you go ahead and take over. I'll stop sharing my screen here so you can.
Okay, are you able to see my presentation? Okay. So I'm sure that most of you, the AOTR does a salary survey every 2 to 3 years, and just looking across the state of Ohio in comparison of salaries. After conducting this year's survey, we thought it would be best to share the results with you guys, as a lot of changes in salary would begin with you. I'm just going to go through it really briefly. If you have any questions, please stop and ask me, and then I'll be sure to send the PDF version of this to Alex so that she can distribute it to you guys so you have a hard copy. One of the things we look at is trauma registry professionals' job titles. A lot of times job titles will play a factor into where you fall into your pay category. Common titles we see are trauma registrar, data application analyst, coordinators, coding specialists, managers, and so forth. This year we only had 64 participants, and I think it was distributed to about 140 people, so only 64 of them responded, which is about the same average of 2019. One thing I did notice going throughout this survey is very few things changed from 2019 to 2021. 26 people responded from a level 1, 16 from a level 2, and 15 from a level 3. A lot of people were curious about flexibility and work locations. So 95% of the participants have a work from home option, and 58% of them do it full time. 5% of the registrars were not able to work from home, and they were required to work in the office full time. 95% had the ability to adjust their hours as needed, as long as there was approval and communication from their manager. The average registrar professional in Ohio makes $24.87. They track approximately 748 patients per FTE per year. They have 9 hours of experience, a college degree, and they work full-time in the registry. This just shows the average of caseload per FTE over the years, and it has stayed pretty steady around the 740 to 750 patient range. You can just see the trend of the hourly increase from 2001 to now. Again, it only went up about 65 cents from 2019 to 2021. Years of experience, we're currently 9.3 years of experience for all 64 participants in the survey. As you can see, the fluctuation over time. Levels of education, 40% have an associate's degree followed by a bachelor's degree at 28%. 10% have a HIM certificate, and 3 have master's. Looking at certifications, that's a big part, a big thing that we incorporated starting in 2019, as a lot of people felt it was an encouraging certifications and what sort of compensation comes with that. So 20 people that responded have a CSTR, 20 have an RHIT, and 8 are currently have a CAISS. Of the 20, their average hourly rate is $29.36. With their CAISS, it's $32.50. 7 professionals have both a CSTR and a CAISS at $33 an hour. And 21 respondents have an RHIT or an RHIA certification. Broke down the wage comparison by their education. Nothing stands out too dramatic here for me. I think that some education follow your EMT type certifications would fall into that some education category. Then looking at it by job title, as I said on the first screen, that some titles will play a factor into where your category falls. And as you can see, having a coordinator name in your title gives you a significant increase compared to just the trauma registrar title. The other job titles are listed on the right. Unfortunately, we didn't have an N number big enough to include their average wage.
Didn't understand.
And then there's also questions asking about supervisory responsibilities. And on average, 5 people replied that they do have supervisory responsibilities, and they make an average of $26 an hour. Wage comparison by facility admission, so less than 1,000 patients is at $24, 1 to 2,000 patients, $24, and over 4,000 patients per year is at $25. This N number dropped to 53 from 64, and that was just due to incomplete data within the survey. No surprise here, the more experience you have, the higher your wage. Greater than 20 years experience is an average of $29. I'm going to stop there and pause for a second before I get into the breakdown of level of trauma center. Does anybody have any questions?
Hi, Akron General, Cleveland Clinic Akron General. When you looked at these salaries, is this the people who answer the survey? This is them self-reporting what their salary is. Is that, am I understanding that correctly?
Yes, that is correct.
Because I don't understand. Maybe someone out there can help me understand. Because I'm kind of going through this now, trying to get our registrars what they deserve. And our compensation department says they do this market analysis. Well, who are they asking? Because clearly, if you're asking these, I know there's only 64 of them, but I'm not sure I understand why compensation's coming down with such a lower rate than what is reported, self-reported here.
I think when they announce, I feel like each system does it differently, and so I'm not really sure how they pull that in, but I think they look at comparable responsibilities and such. I don't have a great answer.
Yeah, that may be it. That may be it, but I don't know. I'm gonna I definitely want a copy of this PowerPoint so I can show somebody.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll have Alex share after the meeting.
Thank you.
Kelly, the slide that you showed, the certifications, and eight had the CAISS. Is the denominator 64 data registrars and only 8 of them had CAISS? The,
That is
the bar chart that you had. Oh, there it is. Yeah, so that denominator is 64.
correct.
Wow.
Yeah, but is the new standard one person per center has to have that, not everyone, correct?
Yeah.
Am I
But
remember
that was the most registrars were typically getting the CSTR.
Yeah.
Prior to CAISS was not the go-to certification. I think for a
It's
couple
an easier.
different.
Do we have data as a result of this survey of how many responding centers have at least one CAISS trained individual? Can you filter that?
We did not ask.
Hey Kelly, it's Andrea. I see on this slide right here that we've got 2 RNs and 2 LPNs listed too. Are they included in all of the salary results? Because I'm wondering if that can skew some of the salaries, knowing that they're likely paid higher than those who are not nurses.
Yes, that is correct. So their salaries are included in that in the average of everyone. A lot of those people fall into a non-trauma center. So when we break it up by facility, then you can, most likely those RN, LPNs will be removed from that category.
Okay, that might be helpful for folks who are trying to go through this with HR to increase compensation if we can pull the nurses out if those centers don't use nurses as their registrars.
And if there's something specific that you need, I'm happy to go through the data and pull out some specific statistics that will help you in that conversation. All right, so I will move on to level 1. So the average for level 1s was $25.06. They're responsible for 736 patients per FTE, 11 years experience, and they collect an average of 4 data sets. So when you look at multiple data sets, that's going to include if your facility is responsible for doing non-trauma centers within your health system, or if you collect for a burn registry, acute surgery, things like that. Those are all called considered individual data sets for the purpose of this survey. Certifications for level 1s, 10 registrars make an hourly average of $30.15 with their CSTR. 4 have their CAISS at an average of $29.56, and 3 registrars are dual certified with an average of $32.41. Looking at the your question about how many people at each facility, if I was guessing, I would think this is just one person at each facility, with the exception of maybe one facility. So there just aren't very many CAISS in the state of Ohio. Average caseload over time still stays around the 740 mark. Hourly rate, there was quite an increase from 2016 to 2019, which stayed steady during 21. Average experience at a level 1 trauma center is 11 years. Any questions about level 1s before I move to 2s? Okay. Level 2s are at, we had a total of 16 people respond, and their average rate was $22.76. Responsible for 757 patients, 9 years of experience, and they also collect on 4 data sets. Certifications, 3 have a CSTR, 1 had CAISS, and 1 is dual certified. 6 of them do have their RHIT. Average caseload over the years, pretty steady. Nothing was really dramatic changing over time. Hourly wage did increase about 6.4% from 2019. And level of experience has had a decrease over the last few years, but is around 9% or 9 years of experience. Lastly, looking at level 3 center, they're at $24.05 an hour. They're responsible for a few more patients than your 1s and 2s, at 784 patients, 6 years of experience, and they collect on 2 data sets. 4 of them have their CPR, 1 has a CAISS, and 1 has both. Average caseload is right below 800 patients. Where they started at dollars have doubled in 10 years, so that's good. Or 20 years, sorry, at $24.05. With an average of 6 years in experience. Non-trauma. This is a little higher at the 25 mark. That's where I think those RNs and LPNs fall into this category. And that's it. Any other questions?
Well, thank you, Kelly, so much. This is really good information. I think it'll be really helpful for a lot of the centers that are trying to kind of restructure their pay scale for the registrars. Does anyone have any other questions for Kelly? I think Melody put in the chat, can the report on salary be shared? So, Kelly, will you be able to send me the PowerPoint so I can send that, or a version of it?
I have it in PDF. I'll send it with you. Send it to you, and you can distribute.
All right, perfect. I will send it.
AOTR website.
Okay, it'll be on the AOTR website as well. Great.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions for Kelly? All right. Well, thank you so much, Kelly, for taking the time to present that information for us.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
So, bye. I'm sending out a quick vote right now because we're at 12:07. And I just want to see, mainly for the people that are here in person, but I sent something out in the chat as well for lunch or a break. If you guys want, I have us scheduled till 1 o'clock. The agenda is pretty heavy today. I think we just had a lot of different things going on. We may not get to everything on the agenda anyway. It may have to push some out to the next meeting. But I'm going to try and kind of hit as much as possible. But I want to put something out in the chat for everyone here, and then we can vote here in the room too. If you guys want to just power through and try and get through the rest of the agenda, if we want to take like a 20-minute break, grab something to eat, and then reconvene and finish up. So the responses are coming in, and we can see everyone's responses here on the screen so far. How, as far as everyone that's in the room, I guess just raise your hands if you want to power through. And lunch. All right, sounds like we're powering through because it looks like everyone on the chat is, we got 94% so far that want to break. So we'll go ahead and, of course, feel free to break on your own if you need to. So we'll go ahead and jump to the next slide here. All right, so Claire, I don't know if you have a whole lot, but I know we talked about wanting to just kind of put legislation back on our agenda, just kind of as a standing item. We've had a couple different conversations about just legislation in general. We've been very involved in the past. We've kind of gotten away from it, but I think it's a good idea for us to get back involved with legislative topics from the state level. And as a starting point, we just kind of want to just keep an eye out for what legislation is out there, and then have discussions amongst the group if there's anything that we want to actually tack ourselves onto, and even maybe starting to establish some connections with legislation or legislators at the state level for when we do have things start to come up that we want to push forward, that we already have some relationships built and some contacts built. So Claire has been gracious enough to kind of help spearhead this a little bit. And of course, if anyone else is interested in legislation and wants to know more about it and be involved, contact Claire or contact me and I'll get you in contact with Claire to maybe start kind of talking through some of this. So Claire, I'll let you kind of give any updates if you have any.
So there's two big like trauma legislation pieces right now. There's the Mission Zero Act, which is kind of that military-civilian partnership. And they actually just sent a letter to the Senate asking for another 11.5 million in funding for that. And that was a letter sent by, there's several organizations on it. TCAA was on it, I believe, as well as EAST and AAST. So that's been sent. And then the other one is the Improving Trauma Systems and Emergency Care Act. So that's really focusing on grant programs for trauma centers and improving trauma center readiness. And then these grants would fund activities for maintaining trauma care infrastructure in areas such as communication training, technology, surge capacity, and data collection. So that's kind of the big one right now. And that was just introduced in February of 2022. So there's not really been a whole lot of progress on that yet. Those are the two big ones.
Does anybody have any thoughts just about legislation in general? I know just, I think a good portion of you are aware, but some of you that are newer to the group into OSTNL and trauma in general may not be aware, but several years ago, there was a big push at the state level. Lynn Haas did a big statewide kind of assessment about the state of our trauma system as a state. And then there was also some legislation that was pulled together in relation to that to actually have a designated trauma board. Because of course, currently we're under the MS board, and there was a push to maybe separate some of that out and to have our own fully operational trauma board that would actually oversee trauma, the trauma systems across Ohio. I don't remember all of the details, but of course there was some legislation put together. There was a bill that this legislation was placed on, and ultimately the bill ended up dying. There was some issues with legislator support, but we did have a supporting legislator, but there were some other stipulations as far as the finance piece goes and actually funding the board. There was something put on the bill to utilize, I believe, funds from motor vehicle accidents and using some funds from the citations from that to fund the trauma board. And I don't, again, it's probably at this point been 6, almost 7 years ago that this was really being pushed forward, but it did not pass. So I don't know if anyone has any thoughts on that, if that's something that maybe not right now, this moment, but is that something that maybe we need to start poking around and seeing is there opportunity there? So I just wanted to kind of open that up to the group if that's something that we think we ever need to look at again in the future, or do we just kind of leave it where it's at and it's really not worth digging into? I don't know if anyone even remembers all of that.
I actually have access to Kathy Healy's files, which,
Yeah.
so
Kathy was a big.
looking at the legislation right now, it looks like, I actually have a file of Lynn and Kathy's work, who the sponsor was. I actually attended a couple of the hearings because I was following Kathy around at the time. But, you know, I think about this often, and I think about Michigan and how they're able to do it, because they have such funding. And I would love to revisit it, but I think based on the course of the legislation previously, I'm not even sure it's worth it until we identify if there's gonna be any funding.
Yeah.
I mean, we need to be able to find someone who can fund it. If we can get that, so I think we start there.
Yeah.
Not necessarily looking for a sponsor, but starting to talk to the money in the state and maybe talk to Michigan. You know, they have a lot of insurance support up there, but talk to some of our big, you know, like Intel. I mean, Intel's coming, right? I mean, certainly they have money, right? I don't know who the big money makers are, but I do think we should, if we're gonna even think about it, we should have conversations with people who hold the pocketbook.
And I don't think we have much of a voice. I haven't been on the trauma committee very long, but it seems like a lot of our focus is more pre-hospital, more, and not that that's not relevant, but there's nothing nowhere for us.
Yeah.
Do we know exactly what killed that bill the last time? I felt like it wasn't exactly funding. There was something else.
I don't think it was that bill, it was piggybacked onto another.
Yeah, there's
They kept
something else.
adding things to it, like I
Yeah.
think happens a lot of times with, you know, this type of legislation. And I think it got to the point where, you know, the actual goals from the legislation were being lost from the trauma legislation.
Fire chiefs pushed back a lot because they thought it should be a TCD bill and not just a trauma bill, so there was some.
Who did that? I'm
issues there.
sorry.
And funding was a big issue. The Northwest region had a lot of issues with the funding and
Okay,
where money was coming from.
okay.
You know, I don't remember why.
Felt like there was something else too, but I can't remember.
There was probably more, but I think the public message was funding.
Okay.
Yeah.
How do we-
And I think that's the challenge right now, is that a lot of our major players that were involved in a lot of this, and a lot of our things have now retired or moved on to other positions. And that's what myself and Julie just recently had this conversation of really wanting to keep that momentum going and not totally lose any of that. Because I mean, realistically, we are, just even as OSTNL on its own, it's literally every trauma program manager across the state. Like, we have power in our voice, and we have those connections and being connected with other groups. And if we can kind of harness that a little bit and focus it on something, then we can maybe start working on maybe making baby steps at least, and trying to push some of these things forward and implementing some change. So and now that with OCOT wanting to kind of restructure and get back on board with things, maybe there's some conversations that we can have with them as well to gain some momentum and work with trauma committee and see what our options are. So I don't know if anyone else has any insight. I agree with you, Leanne, that maybe looking at possibilities for funding before we even really start like getting into the political side of it, just looking at maybe a feasibility, just looking at what are our options if we did want to go down this path? What would funding even look like, and starting to research, because that, I know that definitely came up as one of the big, well, I don't know, like once it came up, it was this great idea, and that the funding part actually came up in the middle of it. Well, how are you going to fund this board? Who's going to pay for these people? And to actually work full time and sit on the board, just like the EMS board, you know, those people are hired by the state. So who's going to pay for that? And so I don't know if anyone else has any other suggestions. Is this something that we do? I mean, I hate to have a million different small committees, but if someone is maybe interested in that wants to take some of these conversations offline, and maybe, again, it doesn't have to be tons of work, we all are stretched, but just slowly starting to chip away at some of this, so then maybe 2 years from now we have more information and we've done at least something, versus us talking about it, bringing it up again 5 years from now, like, hey, remember we had that bill 10 years ago? Maybe we just start with some really baby steps and just getting some information and starting to have conversations with these different groups across the state.
I think it would be good to hear from our predecessors, if we can have some time to have maybe Lynn Hawes and Kathy Haley and Diane Simon has a lot of history with the funding and the legal aspect of it, so we don't go over already trod territory, and maybe, I'm sure they have ideas on where
So
where
maybe
it'd be best to start.
maybe we can see if Lynn or Kathy, of course Diane is still on. I was hoping she'd be on this meeting, but next meeting, I'm sure she'll be available. So maybe we can see what meeting, we can pull Lynn and Kathy out of retirement and see if they want to showcase their knowledge for us, give us some updates at one of our meetings, either the August meeting or October meeting, and then we can maybe get some information and decide where we want to go from there. I like that idea. Anybody else have any feedback or anything like that? Oh, I didn't realize I wasn't sharing my screen.
I think we do have a lot more data now than we had in 13 to 15. I mean, we've got the collaborative, the TEQA collaborative, which TEQA, I don't even, was TEQA even around back then? If it was around, it wasn't
I think it was just-
valuable.
I feel like it was just was it 10 years old or 11 years old maybe?
It was in 13, I think. It was House Bill 261, FYI. But we have come so far as a state as far as data. I think I can say that out loud. Some people may disagree. I mean, I still think we have a lot of challenges with the state data, but that's why we need our voice, I think, because we get lost. Anyway, I'd be interested, Alex, if anyone pulls together.
Okay.
It's always been good.
Okay, so Leanne and Claire, anyone else?
Well, I
Hey,
think
Alex,
as-
Sam Monig, I like to be involved.
As we're getting new potential revenue streams, like new companies, it'd be nice to get on the ground level and maybe sell what we want
Yeah.
to a more steady. It's like we just went over in committee how the whole car safety seat or the child safety seat program has kind of fallen on its knees because over COVID, we didn't have the traffic citations that we did before. So when you tie your revenue stream to something that's not more solid, it impedes your progress. So.
That's a good point.
I have Kathy's testimony that she gave before the legislation, and it actually lays out why we needed this kind of legislation.
Oh, perfect.
It's awesome.
Perfect. So
She was super passionate, so was Glenn, I'm sure Martha.
yeah, they were.
I'm sure she would be happy to come back and give us some tips, because she was very passionate about it.
Awesome. So we'll pull something together and maybe set up a little side meeting so we can maybe have some conversations and then reach out to Kathy and Lynn and see what we have for next meeting. So. All right, so new business. I'm gonna jump around on this just a little bit and try and knock out some of these small things before we get into some of the things that have a little bit more conversation. So really quick on the bylaws, we can have some conversation about this right now and then put it to a vote at our next meeting. But with the conversation about purchasing the OWL camera, microphone pieces, we had some conversation that there's really not really good verbiage in the bylaws to allow the board to make certain purchases. Smaller purchases that we can just go ahead and make without necessarily having a big full-on vote of the entire group. So there was conversation about bringing this to the group as discussion of should we have a set amount, dollar amount of things that the board, I don't think one individual by themselves should be able to purchase anything out of the OSTNL funds, but can our board, so those board of all the elected chairs, can we collectively vote on something up to a certain dollar amount? So say anything under $500. So like say if we wanted to purchase lunch for an OSTNL meeting, which is something that I've tossed around before, can we as the board just decide we're gonna, spend $250 for lunch at the October meeting, and not have to pull in the entire group to meet at the next meeting and vote on all of those things. So I wanted to pull that out for discussion with the group and see if anyone wants to pull together a motion to push forward. And we won't vote on it today because our bylaws, so we have to discuss at one meeting and then actually do a bylaws change at the next. So this will be just discussion and a proposal of a potential bylaws change. So I'm going to open it up to the floor if anyone wants to have any conversation about that. And I don't know if Melody is back on yet. I know this was one of the things that she had mentioned.
So this is Melody. Sorry for echo.
No, you're good.
I'm very multitasking this morning, so I apologize. But I would like to go ahead and extend a motion that we have provisions in the bylaws that would state that the board of directors may determine or execute a decision to spend money by a majority vote of the board with the sum. I was actually going to say up to $1,000. It doesn't have to be that much, but that could be discussion. But I would go ahead and say we need some verbiage that allows the board to meet, vote, and then execute a decision to spend a certain amount of money without it going through the rest of the group.
Do we put a time limit on that? Like $1,000 purchase, if you did 5 of those, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
Do we say like in a 6-month period of time or something to keep it?
Yeah,
but
right.
Just to say it open-ended and not have some other catch there, it could be
to have a certain frequency within no more than, or maybe there's a max of no more than X amount in a year, like no more than 5,000 or no more than 4,000 in a year or something, to where there's still a cap. I think that's
an annual cap would be good.
The annual cap.
Yeah.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
I have a question. In the past, how much has been spent yearly in the past? Can we base it on what was previously done?
So notoriously, we do not spend any money, which is why we have $35,000. We have $35,000 in our account, and definitely no one is trying to just to drain that for sure. But we don't spend very much money. Our income is all through dues. So if you think about, we have $35,000 from dues. So we don't spend a lot. I don't know exact numbers, but let me just go back. If you can see, we currently are spending more than we ever have, and that's just because we have recurring purchases. So this is kind of a quick breakdown of, you can see what we pay out. So the education or the officers get a stipend yearly. So whoever is an officer does get a $500 stipend just for their efforts for contributing to OSTNL. So that is an annual cost of several $1,000s. Then there is the website. So some of this is not going to show an annual because this is only a snapshot of 5 months. But it kind of gives you at least a little bit of an idea. And then there's just some other small things. So like the $19 is the charge. So when I send our official voting through the Election Buddy platform, it costs $19 to do that official vote, which is why we only do it like once a year to do that. And so there's, I pay for it and then I just get reimbursed for that. And then the $2,000 is, of course, the purchase for the OWL devices. And then we have a monthly charge to run and maintain our Microsoft Teams platform. So I would say annually, we're probably spending maybe less than $5,000 a year. And we recoup most of that back, if not more, with our annual dues. The other things that we've paid for in the past, most of the time, if we've paid for anything, it has been education courses. So when we have hosted topic and optimal, we've given discounts for all the OSTNL members. So like $50 or $100 off of the registration cost, OSTNL will pay for that cost. So then when we've had courses, then we've given like maybe a couple $1,000 out of our budget to help go back to the members and pay for that. So we typically aren't spending things. So this would be just putting some level of a cap on something that if we did have a purchase that we wanted to, that we needed to come to do quickly, that we would do that. Because traditionally with the bylaws, we're supposed to, again, meet on things, and then it could take 2 meetings to decide on a purchase for something. So that's 4 months before we purchase something in theory. So this is kind of just putting something in place to allow some flexibility, but I definitely think we should have parameters around it, because we may have the best intentions right now, but 10 years from now, those millennials, think that they might want to drain the bank. So does anyone have any other questions or thoughts on cap? So a cap, initial spending cap, and then an annual cap.
I like $1,000. That gives you a little room. Everything costs more.
If you don't spend money anyways, 1,000 per purchase, 2,000 annually.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Purchase of the year.
So 2 purchases. And then even if you did, but you could do 4 small purchases.
Right.
Yeah. So that allows you to.
Mm-hmm.
And we can also even put that that's something that has to be discussed at the following meeting, following the purchase, which we to discuss the finances anyway, but making sure that the group knows that the board made a decision to purchase something. So currently we're at $1,000 for one individual purchase, $2,000 in a year. Any other thoughts? Margot has no more than 2,000. Okay.
And how much?
You cut out, sorry.
Sorry, I didn't want to overspeak on someone. Yes, I too agree with the 1,000 and then 2,000 cap. But I guess my question is, you were discussing, giving discounts when we do have classes. So I guess, if we could figure, how many members do we have, and potentially how much would that cost us for an educational session? Because do you want to have to come to us as well to say, hey, we're providing this educational class, it's going to cost $1,500.
Right. So this would be, we would follow our normal process for something like that. If we decided we wanted to do a discount on education, we would do our formal process, present it to the group, and then vote on it. This would be more so in, I don't want to say an emergency situation, but more of a time-sensitive situation where we needed to get a quick approval. Because if we officially vote, technically it should be either in the actual meeting or using that election buddy platform to really have a secure vote by actual voting members. So it puts just a lot of constraints on us to do it, to really follow the bylaws, and we're trying to follow the bylaws as much as possible. So that would be separate from this. This would be more time sensitive purchases.
You bring up a different aspect of it. Two things come to my mind. Are all the board members' dues paid up to date? Because that's always a voting issue. Yeah. And what would the threshold be for the decision to purchase? A majority, a simple majority?
I think they said,
other things come.
I think someone said majority is what I think.
Yeah, and Melody said majority. So there are some stipulations in the bylaws for other things. And I believe it's majority for the bylaws. For the group, it is, I think 3/4. There's two different breakdowns on votes one's for the board and one's for the whole group. So we would need to be very specific in the verbiage on that as well. So any other thoughts, comments, suggestions? So I think you guys can chew on that a little bit. We'll do an official vote at the next meeting. Melody, I don't know if you want to send me some of you're so good at putting motions together. It sounds so good. If you want to send me any of that, and I can even write it out and send it to the group so everyone kind of can see, you know, what we're potentially proposing, and then we can have an official vote at the August meeting.
Yes, I can try to do that. I actually started typing it in the chat, so I'll keep working on it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. All right. So another piece, I'm going to jump down to the trauma nurse leader pins. There were some emails going around. I don't know if it got out to everyone, but in the past, again, talking about purchases, we have purchased little pins that had trauma nurse leader on them. And if anyone wants to chime in, again, this was a lot of the things that were put forth by OSTNL members that have now retired, but there were little pins that OSTNL purchased that were made to give out to nurses, trauma nurses at our individual centers, kind of as something to encourage them or highlight them as a trauma nurse. It was up to each center to decide the parameters on what they wanted to give the pin for, but we purchased, I don't know, a couple hundred pins. And then had them available for the program managers to take back to their institutions and decide how they wanted to disseminate them. I know Dayton Children's has been looking at and asking about the pins and seeing if there was any left and wanting to purchase more. So this would be something that we would fill out our financial request form and submit to the group as well if we wanted to actually purchase more of those pins. I tried to find a picture of them so I could put it on the PowerPoint, but I couldn't find it. But it's just a little circular pin. It has like a little gem in the middle of it, and it says trauma nurse leader, I think, around the circumference of the pin. I feel like I remember when we were putting it together that we wanted it to say OSTNL, but we couldn't fit that.
That's true.
Put it on there. So I know we have the paperwork because Ann Moss was one of the main people pushing for the pins at the time. We have her paperwork. So I just wanted to put that out there to the group that it is something that you'll probably see a request for at the August meeting as well. And I think we probably should also discuss, do we want to change the look of the pin? Is anyone interested in maybe having a different look for that pin? So does anyone have anything they want to add to that at all? Is there interest in even continuing that as a group?
I like those pins, but maybe I'm older, but you know, like if somebody's really, like say someone's done a special project for trauma service or whatever, it's nice to be able to include like a thank you note and then that pin. Or the only thing I would ask is, do we want to, I guess we want to say trauma nurse leaders, not just trauma leaders. Like, do we want to include any of our operations people? You know, like if they, I don't know. I understand we're nursing groups, but times are changing. I don't know.
That's true.
Hey Jenny, this is Andrea. I like that idea of broadening it. I know at our emergency department, we actually have a group of trauma nurse leaders. So being able to expand that out to others, because it would be odd for us at Mount Carmel to give it to somebody outside of that group if it says trauma nurse leader.
So I'll get that paperwork together and probably send something out to the group and just kind of gauge interest and send one of my infamous surveys that I'm sure you guys love out to just kind of see where everyone is at and see if anyone has any suggestions, especially since I know there's a lot of people on vacation and want to make sure that everyone gets a chance to weigh in on potential design and the look and cost. So I'll send the existing information out, but if anyone has any information, like if you've ordered pins or you have companies that you would like to suggest, send me that information as well. Really quick on the burn surge in Region 5 for kids. I just wanted to put this on the agenda and maybe even have some standing updates, again, with kind of the goal of wanting to align some of our silos and just get information out to the group about the different trauma groups that exist across the state. I wanted to put some of these things on our standing agenda, so you'll probably see these two items maybe moved up to our liaison reports, or maybe just put in the written report for updates. But for those that aren't aware, there is a statewide burn surge plan. I have the most up-to-date version, and after this meeting, I'll send that out to everyone. They just had a meeting on the 19th, and Trauma Committee is now involved in the meetings. Thankfully, when it first started, Trauma Committee wasn't even involved. There was this big plan for burn surge, and almost no trauma people were actually involved in it. And this has been in play for several years. I imagine that there's probably trauma programs that have not even heard of the burn surge plan. It's mainly from a regional perspective, but the plan does designate trauma centers as burn surge facilities, meaning that if there is some big mass casualty disaster somewhere in Ohio and we get hundreds and hundreds of burn patients, that this plan would go into effect and our trauma centers could potentially be receiving burn patients from across the state as burn surge facilities. So my opinion on that is that we need to know about that and we need to prepare for that, and we need to be a part of the conversations about developing the plan. I know there are trauma people involved now. Trauma Committee is involved. I know Diane was on the last meeting. So my main purpose is really to just get information out to the rest of you, because we're the ones that really most of the time orchestrate these things as trauma program managers, as the PI coordinators, as the trauma nurse leaders. So we have to be aware of what's out there. So I will send that. It's like a 20+ page document that details everything. And so they are only meeting annually now. They just had their last annual meeting on the 19th. And there were some suggestions on that. So I think they're going to do some offline work groups to work on some of those suggestions. But I did reach out to their main contact and ask them as OSTNL if we can be represented on the meetings as well. So I'll make sure to take back any suggestions. If you guys go through the plan and have any concerns or questions, I'll make sure to get that to the group. But I just want to make sure that I'll be putting updates out there for our group, so everyone at least is in the know about it, and that if some burn surge drill pops up that you're like, I've never heard of this before, where did this come from? So any comments or additional feedback on that, on the burn surge plan? And then Region 5 for kids. This was another group that came up that I'm going to let Lynn take over a little bit and just give a quick update. This is another group that, again, just wanting to give just a couple quick updates that we'll probably add in our meetings, just so, again, everyone's kind of in the know.
Hi, everybody. Just want to give a little update on this. Very similar to the burn surge, where nationally it's recognized that pediatrics really wasn't part of a disaster plan. And it's such a specialized population that nationally they created grants that would focus on disaster preparedness surrounding the pediatric population. So these two grants, this grant was originated from the Assistant Secretary of Preparedness and Response. It was originally called the ASPR grant. 2 regions were given $6 million to pilot what we are creating, which is the Pediatric Disaster Center of Excellence. So one of those centers that were granted this $6 million grant was in the West Coast to San Francisco. And then the other is here at Rainbow, was granted the other. So Region 5 came about because there are 5 regions in the FEMA area. And out of those regions, the 10 hospitals that we're including Our Rainbow is the lead on it, Cincinnati Children's, Moss Children's, which is University of Michigan, Nationwide here in Columbus, Children's Hospital of Michigan, Maui Children's in Illinois, Chicago, and then Children's Hospital in Minnesota, Grand Rapids, Michigan, Helen DeVos Children's Hospital, Wisconsin Children's Hospital in Bragg, in Indiana. So there's quite a few places that are participating in our Region 5, that is called that. This pilot project will define the deliverance of pediatric clinical care when existing systems become very stressed and overwhelmed with these patients. So there's a lot of work being done right now, and again, it's kind of an ongoing project. Dr. Mike Dingelbein, who is our medical director at Rainbow, is leading this alongside with Dr. Colin Clark from Nationwide, and their specific domain alone is working right now on interviewing trauma centers across the regions, there's Region 5, and finding out what gaps that they have, and then in that, best practices for taking specialized cases as far as needs and how everybody can be prepared for that. So a lot happening. Again, this was started in 2019. They've done a lot of work between then and now, but I think things are really gearing up, trying to get out best practices for people. And then the whole goal of this would be that would be shared within the region, so that everybody has the resources and ability to take care of kids in any situation.
You're doing a tabletop next week, right?
Yeah, oh yeah, sorry. So Adam sent Alex 3 documents that she can send out in a minute. The one document explains what this actually is. The second document also talks about kind of Region 5, and I mean in general, then Region 5 is the second document. And then the third document is there's exercises coming up, and next week is an exercise that everybody is welcome to be at. You could just be an observer rather than a participant. And there's another one coming after that in July, and then there's one coming after that in August. So take a look at those. You sign up for this document that she'll send out to you. You're more than welcome to. And one of the things that I had requested from this group and Mike was that how do we at OSTNL kind of become kind of a aligning with what they're doing, and there's a lot of work to be done. So I think there's more to come to this group, so that communication, education, things of that nature can be disseminated through events. So just kind of keep it in the back of your mind that something is going on, and there's a lot of money put forth to these 2 centers of excellence, and good things are coming, so that everybody's prepared for disaster in that population. And it isn't just one area of grade level, being prepared for pediatric.
Yes.
There's a lot of that going on. There's this disaster group, and then there's also the pediatric readiness group that comes out of this as well. So there's multiple things that will help all the centers that are not pediatric centers to be prepared for and be able to meet that requirement for the grade level.
That's a really good point to bring up, because that is in the grade book for our adult centers that normally we've kind of been excluded largely from pediatric readiness, other than, yes, you got to have the right blood pressure cuff size. Now there's a much bigger push that they're going to be looking at our centers and making sure that we are adequately prepared to take care of kids. I've been in on visits that they have asked, where's your pediatric chest tubes? So you've got those things were not going to be exempt from them as at adult center. So I think this is a good time to start making these connections.
There's one thing I wanted to mention to all this group. I don't know if anybody is kind of aware, but there was a survey that was put out last year. It actually went to ED managers. And you may not have been aware that it went out. It was a pediatric readiness survey. It is still available. I can send that out as well if you need to do that.
Yeah, that'd be
It actually
helpful.
will give you, if you do this survey, it will actually give you your readiness score and show you kind of where your gaps are.
Oh, that'd be very helpful.
So if you, I can send it to you.
Yeah, that would be great.
Actually,
Yeah.
that was sent to me yesterday, and I wasn't aware that that was just sent to the ED managers in the state.
Yeah, I don't think it ever made it. Did anybody ever get that? Because,
I don't know.
yeah, I don't think, yeah, it never made it down to,
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I'm part of the center. I don't know who did it, but.
But, and I think
don't
that's-
we have to do, I think it's for centers that are not pediatric centers.
Yeah.
I think that's the ongoing challenge that I think all of us have faced with when people outside of trauma programs think of trauma, they go to the emergency department. And so that's always something that is always a challenge for us. And again, this is just another way for us to try and break down those barriers a little bit and say, hey, we're here and we're actually a massive group that we can actually, if you are having struggles with getting things going, like we can help with that. So thank you so much Lynn, for that. Does anyone else have any questions or any feedback or extra, anything to add with either of those pieces? Okay. So I will move right along really quick because I know we're getting low on time, but I wanted to throw out to the group, we have our level 3 subcommittee, which has been an awesome committee and really helpful to the level 3 centers. And we've gotten really good things that have come out of that group. We have talked over the last year, if not more, and if the PI coordinators are wondering why the heck am I on this meeting, some of our conversations in the last year has been to incorporate our PI, our quality professionals into OSTNL on a much grander scale. And we also want to not bore you with a lot of our content that may not be necessarily related to your day-to-day practice, but still support the PI coordinator. So the thought is to have a carve out or a subcommittee or whatever you want to kind of call it of PI coordinators. And I think participation in the OSTNL meetings is important, but again, we also want to have some time to dedicate just to PI and performance improvement issues or conversations. So I would like to get that started. We've had a lot of different conversations about it. So I'm really looking for 1 or maybe 2 people that are for the PI coordinators. If you guys that are on currently, if you would really like to jump in on this early and be a part of establishing what that looks like, whether again, if it's a subcommittee, if it's a whole separate group, if it's, you know, what that looks like. I'm looking for a volunteer. It does not have to be a PI coordinator because a lot of our trauma program managers are also still doing PI until they can get a PI coordinator or they don't meet the cap to get a PI coordinator. So it's trauma program managers and PI coordinators, but I would like to get the ball rolling on our PI coordinator section of our group. So is there anyone that is interested in helping with that or even leading the charge on that? It also looks really good during your verification visit to have involvement in your state groups, and that's also something in the grade book as well.
I consider him to the role. I don't.
Hey Alex, it's Sarah Miller. This is something I'm definitely interested in, but our survey's in like 2 months, not even. So I can't commit to doing it at this moment, but it's definitely something I want to be involved in, say July 27th.
That's before the August meetings.
You know, what's really funny is I'm actually getting married on August 5th, which is the day of our meeting. So I won't be at that meeting.
Well, that's,
I mean,
no, that's
I
great.
put it on my phone, but.
No, we'll add you in. And even if we want, I think we've been talking about it for almost a year now. So again, I think everyone is super busy and everyone has a lot of things that they're working through. My goal is just to keep things moving. So even if we're not well in advance by the August meeting, yeah, if we have people together to start some of these conversations and we can get things going. So great. Anyone else?
Alex, this is Christy Clark from Miami Valley, so I'm interested in helping out.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. All right, so if anyone else is interested, go ahead.
Oh, this is Rachel Denby from Rainbow. Yeah, I would definitely be interested in taking part in this and helping out if I can.
Okay, perfect. So if you guys want to just shoot me a quick email, because usually after these meetings I have like 50 emails that I pour through, but I always go through them at some point so I don't forget anyone. Just send me a quick email to remind me, and then I'll pull together a group. And anyone else, eventually this will be all PI coordinators that are on the call will be able to come to this. And this is really just to get things going and kind of mapping out what we want it to look like. So just shoot me an email if you're interested. Same thing with the pediatric trauma centers. A much smaller group, but we have a level 3 group. We're working on PI coordinators. A lot of times the pediatric trauma centers kind of fall by the wayside with some of the pediatric specific initiatives. So I'd like to propose maybe forming a committee, subcommittee specific for the pediatric trauma center, so you guys can talk through more of the pediatric specific things, and then maybe bring back some updates to the big OSTNL group. Is anyone interested from the pediatric trauma centers in helping to pull that together?
I think we've talked about once we get our Ohio Peach collaborative together, so that would be 7 out of the 8 centers. I think we've talked about aligning our meetings with OSTNL. So hopefully that work is in process.
Maybe you can just take the lead on that and just kind of bring it all
Pull
up.
it together. Okay,
Yeah.
that would be great. All right, perfect. All righty, so.
Sorry.
Awesome. So trying to fly through the agenda. ESO, the patient registry demo. I don't want to spend much time with this. I think there was a good portion of people that were on. It was a great turnout. I think I'm impressed with the product. I really would like to see more. For those that couldn't attend, long story short, the ESO patient registry will be released in early 2023. However, they are still in the building stages. They're actively building while this is going to be released. So if you are wanting all the bells and whistles, probably don't anticipate getting it until third quarter of 23 at the earliest. And that's going to be all the different pieces and components that they will have available, because it is, like I said, still in the building stages. The very basic product will be released at the beginning of 23. They did not put a price point out yet. They did say the range is still between $12,000 and $40,000. But they did reiterate that $40,000 is the whole package. So I equate it to like Apple. I feel like it's kind of, you have your iPhone and your iPad and all the products work together and that kind of thing. I think the patient registry is going to be very similar. That $40,000 price tag is if you have the trauma registry, the stroke registry, the rehab. I don't know if they have rehab, but stroke, I think, what was the other, if anybody remembers offhand, I think they had cardiac, they had a couple different pillars of registries. And if you have all of those and all the bells and whistles, that's your max price is going to be that $40,000 range. They said they won't have real concrete pricing probably until third quarter of this year. So get with the contacts. Offhand, I'll maybe add this in one of the emails I sent out too as well, the contact that they gave, I can't think of his name offhand, that will give pricing. But again, don't anticipate anything until third quarter of this year with a rollout of third quarter of next year. So I don't know if anyone else had anything that they wanted to throw out there really quick, thoughts or opinions wise on that.
This will be a capital budget request if you guys are putting in capital budget requests right now. And I put one in and my IT department came back and asked me for a quote. So I just connected them with Alan at ESO and said, here, ask him, because they don't have money, but we need to know for our capital request. So I would recommend, if you don't have a salesperson, then reach out to Carla if you need her information. I can get that for you and she can connect you with that. Because I assume if you're doing capital requests, you're going to need the semblance of amount.
If you ask for 40 and it's only 12, you'll look like the winner. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Because if I get 40, then I think I'll be all right. They did say it would be in that range, and 40 was the kind of upper limit.
Did they give the time limit though to transition?
Before you have to be off of your other product. I don't think they were going to give a max of, I feel like they said they weren't going to tell anyone that they had to switch, that they were still going to maintain the other databases as long as the other customers wanted them. Now, is that going to be for the next 20 years? I doubt it. But at this time, they did not say that they were they had a date of where they were forcing everyone off of the current registry platform. I think it'll probably progressively get harder and harder to maintain those platforms and probably be more of a headache than it's worth over time, but I don't think they have.
Hard enough to get support now.
Yeah.
Eventually, they won't support the current products, and they said 3 to 5 years at least before they would stop support, is what they're anticipating. Again, that kind of range, but.
We have. Yeah, I know. So there is UC is actually going live with the product.
It's supposed to be sometime this summer. We had demonstrations. It was led by the level, the level one. That's what they want. I mean, we signed the contract, so it's supposed to happen, but we'll share when it happens. So they made the decision. That's what we're doing. So.
And we did have
going with Respond.
We did have one of the representatives from Respond come to OSTNL meeting probably a year ago by now. So I think it's probably time for us to maybe invite them back and so do another demo because that seems to be right now the two main registries that people are toggling between is the Respond registry, which is actually based out of Cleveland. So they're an Ohio-based company that does the recording for the trauma rooms. They've done that for a long time and very well established, and they're now jumping into the trauma registry piece. I have seen their demo. They have a really great product. It feels and looks a lot similar to ESO's product as well. There's a couple differences though. So I think we can have those conversations even through OSTNL. We can work on getting the Respond rep to come to one of our meetings and do a presentation and even invite ESO back for a virtual presentation once they get some of their other bells and whistles up and running. I know we didn't get a chance in the demo to see the recording, so maybe that's something that we can pull together as well.
Hey, Alex, do we happen to know like maybe what the state is thinking? I don't know if anybody is on that's involved in that, like if they're gonna sunset and go to that after, because I think they have DI now currently.
The only thing that I have, and it's not official at all, is I think the state is more comfortable with the ESO product. There's some hesitation there's already a lot of struggle with exports. And I think that the thought is that the ESO product, it'll be easier to do a lot of the updates and the exporting and not get caught with some of the issues they've had with smaller company. So I don't know if that's the official stance, but that's just kind of what I've heard.
According to Rob,
Okay,
they're
thanks.
contract with DI through 2023. So at least they wouldn't go for the next almost 2 years yet.
They're contracted till 2023, so they wouldn't go for at least a couple years. So they'll be on the current contract for quite a while. So really quick, I know we're out of time, so we can continue this conversation, but I did want to at least put it out there. I'm not sure if Bernie is on, but we'll have to push the delirium TQIP piece until the next meeting. But just so everyone knows, the CDC and the American College of Surgeons have worked together to put out the new National Field Triage guidelines for injured patients. It's a little confusing because the state also has field triage guidelines, and that's this slide here. And this is the old version. The state actually just updated their version just within the last month and a half. So there was a lot of confusion because there was information about that, and then all of a sudden this came out. So people weren't really clear on like what does this mean. So traditionally, the CDC has put out National Field Triage Guidelines. This is the 2011 version. This is what has been out there nationally for the last 10 years. And then most places, and even Ohio, formatted their field triage guidelines for their EMS providers based off of the CDC recommendations. The CDC partnered with NHTSA to create these guidelines. So I guess for the 10-year anniversary of this, the ACS got involved, and they, with the support of NHTSA and the CDC, they have updated the field triage guidelines. So this is a 2011 version. And you can kind of see how the state version is modeled very closely after the national version. But this slide here is the new version, and this was sent out via email to you guys, so I know it's probably impossible to read. But this is what the new version looks like. So I wanted to really quick, if anyone had any concerns or questions, my personal opinions, I think a lot of it is going to be very subjective in how it's interpreted by EMS agencies, and then also up to the state. And with Diane being out, we'll probably have to wait and see kind of what, and I don't know, Julie, if you have any insight, if trauma committee, what trauma committee will decide if they're going to update, even though they just updated the guidelines, are they going to wait to update again? Are they going to put what's currently updated out and do another update? Are they going to align with this? Is that?
I got a copy of that in my last minutes.
I thought she said, I was listening in May. I thought she said those are the guidelines and then they will, it's always open, like they would bring other suggestions. There was some physician on that wanted to make suggestions. And then they had open meetings, was that?
So I was
They were
on that
having a
call.
meeting after
Yeah.
our meeting.
I talked to the Region 4 RKB chair the other day, and what they stated at the meeting, they just presented this.
Yeah.
And then they presented the rules, and Dr. Cunningham challenged the trauma committee to take this and compare it to the state rules, and then submit their changes back to the committee. And if there were changes, whether they were going to follow this or not, it had to go through the whole JCAR process, which could be like a year and a half or so.
Okay.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Dr. Cunningham talked about it, but then she just was talking about how it came out and not what the.
They then sent an email back to the entire committee after that meeting
No.
and that outlined what they should do. Go through the rules, not just your little tree from 2019, but actually go through the rules and this and see how it impacted, and then they would make their opinions back. Whether the opinions are just opinions or they actually get the rule rewritten, that's going to stand to be seen. Have you heard anything else more to that? I mean, that does impact Columbus Trauma Centers because we have 1s and 2 in the urban area. What you guys down there, that impact the rest of the state or?
Potentially this impacts the level 3s. I don't know. What do you think, Shannon? I mean, potentially if you, I mean, we'd get these red high serious patients. I think you. Right. There's, right. I still think they're gonna go the closest if they can, and they still, you know, they're strapped with staff, and if we can, depends on, I think, you know, if you have established trauma center and they're used to you, you know, I think they'll, and what does region mean? Is region your,
That's the nebulous.
that's the real, like, is it your, what I think of the region, or some people are gonna think of that as your own system? Like, I don't know, like.
When you read the whole document that explains line by line, it's
Yeah.
very vague. Did you guys not think? It was vague, and there was no shalls or musts.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
I am kind of struggling to see the major changes between the two, between the 2011 version and 2021 version.
Yeah, I
They're
think
very
it's
similar.
very similar, and I think just aesthetically it looks different. So initially it was alarming to everyone, like, oh, it's totally different. But when you really look at it, it is very similar. One of the big things I noticed was, so this is the 2011, the change of the version where it says in the bold under the red box and really under the other, it says in red criteria should be transported to the highest level trauma
Right.
center available within the geographic constraints of the regional trauma system.
Right.
It used to just say trauma system. That regional piece adds another monkey wrench, I think, for us, because our regions are a little bit fluid, and depending on how, so like where I came from, Atrium sits in the Cincinnati region, but is actually a part of a different hospital system. So depending on, again, how literally you interpret that, what does that mean? And are there implications for that verbiage?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the big.
So when you look at stuff like GCS, the new guideline, a little more restrictive. GCS is less than 6, and then the 2011, it was GCS less than 13, so the 2011 was tickets or anything.
I kind of wanted to know who wrote those red boxes. Was that the COT or is that like the level 1 surgeon? Like, I don't know, like for us who are out here doing like, is EMS. So for me, like I'm without traffic, what do you say, 30 minutes from UC? And so, you know, do they go ahead and go down or, I don't know. Like, I think it's going to be interesting what we're going to say.
From a Cox region, we're all gonna meet this month, I think next week, and talk about how we think we read it.
Right.
And then sit and wait for what the trauma committee decides.
Yeah.
I know Dr. Z from Mount Carmel, who's also the Region 4 chair, he said they discussed it last month, all the RPABs, all the whole state, and then they're gonna discuss it, I think, next week at the medical oversight, because I know you mentioned they didn't meet, but apparently they're meeting in 2 weeks. And then they'll discuss it in September, and they're just sitting tight to wait and see what Ohio, not the Committee on Trauma, but Ohio Trauma Committee. So, and he had some peers from Dayton, from Cincinnati, he mentioned some names.
Oh, he
that
did?
were also weighing in on.
Oh,
just
be
their
curious to know
private
who those
RPAB
peers
stuff.
are.
Yeah.
Those peers are. Like who's, I don't know, there's great competition, I know everybody knows that and all the, so it just, I don't know, let's see.
Yeah, I think we're the first formal group, I think, to actually talk about this collectively. I know all the other groups are planning, or at their next meetings, they're gonna be talking about it, so you'll probably hear more about it. But I wanted to at least put it out there so people that haven't heard about it at least are aware of it in case things come up. And I don't know if anyone feels like at this point in time, do we need to do anything or push for anything? I mean, it seems like it's gonna be largely up to what the state decides. At the end of the day, it's not, that's when the real impact will take place.
We had some fire chiefs contact me about it, and I just said, stand down, we're all talking about it.
Yeah.
We'll let you know when there's a decision.
Hey, Alex, this is Ann. You sent this out, right, in an email? Did you send both of them out?
I did not. The email I sent out had just the new version, but what I'll do is, because I have a list of things to send out, I'll send out the Ohio. I was hoping to find the most recent updated version, but this is the officially released one. So this is probably the best one to use anyway. I'll send out these last 2 slides with the 2011 and then the Ohio one, along with everything else again, so everyone has it in one spot to compare.
Thank you.
All right, so really quick before we close, I know we're a little bit over and I appreciate everyone staying on. Is there anything that anyone needs to get out round table or anything that anyone wants to announce really quick before we wrap up? Okay. Well, if not, I need a motion to close. Motion, I need a second.
Second, this is Melanie.
Thank you. So we are now adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for a great meeting. We'll move the things over to the next meeting, and I will see you guys in August. All virtual for the next meeting.
Does anyone need parking validation this year?
Thank you.
Here?